Hi there, everybody. I'm going to talk a little bit about Good News for You, and this is something that if you're a long-term member of St Thomas's, you'll know all about, but if you're a newer member of St Thomas's, you may not. You're going to hear something about that this morning. Good News for You is our method of helping people who are interested to find out more about the basics of the Christian faith from the comfort of your own home. What could be better? And the reason that we're doing this promo right now is for two reasons. It's partly to introduce new church members to it, but it's also to give fair warning to longer-term members that we do need people willing to be on a team, because God is on the move at the moment. And I would say I've probably organised more Good News for You teams in the last 3 months than the previous 3 years, which is probably telling us something, I think. But a little bit of history. When St Thomas's was started around about the 1970s, it was on a brand new estate, and most of the residents were mainly young families. And the minister at the time wanted a way of reaching out, particularly to that demographic, in a place where people with children couldn't readily come to something at the church. So that was certainly one factor. But he also wanted something that was so simple that virtually every church member could be on a team without needing any training. So there'd be no books, there weren't even any set questions. It was just a scrappy little bit of paper with a few Bible verses on it, passages to read and to talk about. And they focused very specifically on Jesus, who he claimed to be, the cross, the resurrection, that sort of thing. So it was very, very focused. And it basically allows people to assess the evidence for themselves. An opportunity, because it's so focused in their own home on a couple or perhaps a single person, then there's room to ask their own questions. Things are particular to them, the things that have been bugging them, or things maybe arising out of their own life experiences. And this basically is what we still do today. We have a team of 3 go out if it's a couple, or we have 2 people if it's a single person. And it's very much focused on them and their needs, and it'll be on a day that suits them, at a time that suits them. And the nature of it, if somebody's ill or has holiday, it can be adapted around that, so it's extremely flexible. But a really, really important part and powerful part of Good News for You is that it's the team sharing their own journey, their own experiences of a life that's lived with God. So personal testimony is something that's really important. So just to give you an idea, I'm just going to give some fictional names, but just to show how this worked and how it became a sort of rolling thing in our church, really. So these are imaginary names, just to give you the idea. So Katie becomes a Christian, and she's soon on a team going out to Emma and Ben. Emma becomes a Christian and is the 3rd member on a team to Matt and Becky. And the newest believer on a team is often the most effective person, because they can remember very easily what it was like not to be a Christian and before they came to faith. That was an imaginary example, but I'm going to give you a real example, and some of these people have moved to other parts of the country, are not all in our church at the moment, but some of you will, of course, will know these. So we had Keith and Janet Capp, who became Christians on the 41st Good News for You outreach course. And just after that, Keith, a very new Christian, along with Sue and Richard Grundy, went on an outreach to Pam and Phil Page, who became Christians. Then just a few months later, Janet, Keith and Phil took Good News for You to Steve and Judy Cathcart. You can see how it works and how it's intended to work. And these people at the time were not cradle Christians, but people who were becoming Christians and believers, say in their 30s, just because somebody gave up 6 evenings to share that with them. And just a few statistics, which I think are quite challenging to us. We think we're doing well at the moment, but here goes. So the pilot scheme for Good News for You had just 5 teams going out in the first year. 15 people out of a congregation of about 60 at that time. A year later, 19 teams went out into people's homes. Only 5 years later, 36 teams went out in that year. And that was 80 different church members joining a team. And the idea was that this was not an activity for those who were that way inclined. There was, and I think still should be, a default assumption that virtually any church member, when asked, would be able to join a team and be able to share their faith. And it's not about knowing all the answers or being clever or anything like that, but basically anyone who has a story of faith, how they became a Christian and so on, and just an experience of God in their life can do this. And I'm just going to ask a couple of people to share their experiences of coming to faith through Good News for You and going on a team. It might seem a really weird thing to do, to ask strangers into your home, and a very weird thing to knock on somebody's door that actually at that point you might not even have met. But it is amazing how on that very first night it relaxes, and it soon becomes just a very enjoyable and happy thing to do. So I'm going to ask Joyce, first of all, to come up and share something of two things, actually receiving a team and being on a team. So,
yes, okay. My journey began when we moved here. As Julie said, it was a new estate, and we moved here as a family of 5. We came to St Thomas's. We knew about St Thomas's. I think we thought we were Christians because we came at Easter, we came at Harvest, and we came at Christmas. But then Philip joined our youngest, joined the Cubs and Scouts. And a requirement there was on a Sunday, the first Sunday of the month, they had a parade service. So Philip, dressed in his uniform, said, "You have to take me to church every month." And so we came. And somebody stood at the front, I think it was John Stringer at the time, and said, "Do you feel that you belong to this church?" Well, when we got home, Derek and I said, I know which one it was, but it sparked a conversation. And we said, well, we go, don't we? But don't know whether we belong or know much about it, really. Well, God was already one step ahead. The next morning at the church gate, someone from St Thomas's said, "Saw you in church yesterday. It was nice to see you." And I said, "Can you answer something?" I said, both Derek and I said, we'd like to sort of know a bit more. "Oh, got just the thing for you called Good News down your street. So, are you willing?" I said, "Well, I'll ask Derek." And Derek said, "Oh, yes, that would be good." So 3 people came, and we went through the Good News down your street. And we made a commitment at the 6 weeks. It's 6 weeks, isn't it? 6 weeks. And we've been coming to church ever since. And it was a revelation, really, from coming 3 times a year to going once a month, because we sort of thought it was the right thing to do, to being fully committed into the family, really, of St Thomas's.
And you've recently actually been on a team. I mean, I'm sure over the years you've done that, but very recently you've been on one that only finished a couple of weeks ago. Do you want to just talk about the other side of it? Keith started to come to church. I used to see Keith walking around with his dog, and he was always chatting. I thought, how lovely. I did say I was a member of St Thomas's, and I was on welcome duty a couple of months ago. Is it Keith now? He suddenly walked into church, and I said, it's lovely to see you, Keith. Anyway, Keith has been coming regularly, and Brian Gilchrist and I just did Keith's Good News down. Well, it's Good News for You now, isn't it? Good News for You now. And Keith, well, it was wonderful. He made his commitment on week 6, and we were just absolutely over the moon, really. And I'm just going to ask Keith just to come up and just say a few words about how you found it.
Right. I'd just like to say that since I have been coming to the church, I've noticed a big difference in myself. which is really helped me. And going on this course with Brian and Joyce, you know, I thought, what's it going to be like? Is it going to be boring or what? Because I'm, you know, new member of the church, I don't know what things are going to be like. But once I got there, Brian and Joyce made me very welcome, and they started the course. And with me, I'm very curious, and some of the words I was coming out with, you know, I had to keep stopping them because I asked questions, a lot of questions, and they put me right a lot of times about God. I mean, I even asked a question, I don't know whether it was right or wrong, you know, is it God? Is it Jesus? Is it the Lord? And the Bible says, it's all of them. You know what I mean? Because who do you pray to? And now I realise you can use all the names, but I pray to God. Because before I came to church, I did believe, but I did nothing about it. I lost the wife, and that made me go it the other way. But then I had a thought, got up one Sunday morning, I'll go to church, never looked back since. And the courses, I mean, I don't know, Matthew, Luke, you know, Matthew, Mark, Luke and John, Acts, Corinthians, Rome. I'm thinking, what's happening? You know what I mean? And it does really, really help. And to have somebody like Brian and Joyce give you the confidence to sit there, talk about it, and listen to my questions, you know, it's been great. Thank you. Thank you.
And I just have one more testimony. This is from Sean, who couldn't be here this morning, but he WhatsApped me. So I'm just going to read out Sean's testimony. I did consider editing some of this, but I won't. So Sean says, when Elsie was around 9 months old, Jo had been taking Elsie to Tom's Toddlers for a while and said she wanted Elsie christened at St Thomas's. Jo inquired and was told about Good News for You. I know exactly what I said to Jo when she told me about it. I'm not going to start going to church. I went into the sessions with a view of getting it out of the way so Elsie could be christened. I was sure it wouldn't do anything for me with regard to faith. I'd been to church as a kid and into my teens and didn't think it had much to offer me. Fast forward to 3 strangers, Julie, Sue and Richard, walking into our house. I very much had my guard up. They soon came down when Sue and Richard told stories from their lives about how God had saved them or given them courage. To hear personal accounts from people is something that hit home. It felt more relatable than when these things are shared from people's lives and not just a story from the Bible. Then he talks about me. Pretty annoying at times. I thought on a few occasions I had a gotcha, but she always had a response that put me back in my box. This gives a very bad impression, I'm afraid. This helped me, it was positive. This helped me because I had formed views that were clearly not correct, and it was good to have that pointed out, in a nice way, of course. During Good News for You, I felt comfortable asking questions and not be judged for asking them, regardless of how stupid they were at the time, or potentially ignorant of the Christian faith they might have been. The answers piqued my interest, and after most sessions, I do a bit of research myself. Who knew there was actually a lot of evidence for the Bible and what it says? I can look back now and know that if more people knew the facts and evidence of the Bible, there would surely be more Christians. Good News for You is a 6-week course. It took us a little bit longer due to Elsie being sick, but by the end of it, things were definitely different for me. I looked at the lives of the 3 people who had been coming to our house, and I wanted what they had. There was a strength and peace coming from a place I didn't realise existed, and a confidence from them in where it had come from, which was God. I can look back now and realise that as a Christian, I would love others to come to know God, as it's such a great life. That is what Julie, Sue and Richard were doing for Jo and I. In essence, the good news for you does what it says on the tin. It's good news for you to know God and be a Christian, because life with God is better. I'll be forever grateful to them for the time they spent with us, as I'm sure I wouldn't be a Christian now had it not been for that. Thank you to you all for getting me there. So, yeah, and interestingly, Sean himself, and actually Sean didn't make a commitment during it. It was lay the foundations for the ensuing weeks. And Sean has recently been on a team himself, sharing his own faith, which is fantastic. So it's really kind of over to you, really. So I would say to talk to me or to David or to anyone else if you would actually like a team to come to you. But please, those of you who are longer-term team members, remember, you have friends or family, just remember Good News for You and these testimonies, and don't be afraid to offer it to them. And it needn't be you then sharing your faith. If that's tricky with family members and friends, it can be completely different people who may be the right people to do that. But also, be aware that you will be being invited probably at some point to join a team, and all you have to have is a story to tell. And I would say that even if you've been a church member for a while and you think, I don't know that I do have a story, then it's never too late to actually have a team come to you.